Okay, so on the back of the Year 12 test, which I know a lot of people found tricky, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through how to do this. What I would suggest is that you make careful notes of this and you watch it a lot, simply because the test to see whether or not the course is suitable, which will be in 2 weeks' time, this will be a big part of it. So all the questions that appear here, some variation of these questions will appear on that test. So if you know this, chances are that on that test you'll do very well. Okay, so what I'll also try and do is I'll try and go through some mistakes that people made as we go through it. So let's start off with the first one. Square root of 32 plus the square root of 18. Because you're adding them, you can't add the square root. So that is not the square root of 50. That doesn't work like that. The only thing you can do is if it's multiplying, you can multiply 32 and 18 and have the square root of whatever that turns out to be. But because it's adding, we can't do it. So we've got to simplify this square root and simplify this square root. So what we've got to do is we've got to find two numbers that multiply together to make 32. And you could have like the square root of 4 and the square root of 8. And then you could have, if we simplify the square root of 4, that goes to 2, so you could have 2 root 8. The only issue with that is that you can also simplify the square root of 8. So what I would do is I'll try and find the biggest square number that goes into 32. And the biggest square number that goes into 32 is 16. So we can say that root 32 is root 16 times root 2. Then we're going to add to that square root of 18. So the biggest square number that goes into 18 is 9. So root 9 root 2. And you should know that you haven't made a mistake because both of them will have root 2 in there. So the square root of 16 is 4, so that's 4 root 2. Square root of 9 is 3, so that's 3 root 2. So 4 root 2 plus 3 root 2 equals 7 root 2. And that's what we get for the first 2 marks. Now, the next one is simplify. So if we have a look at this one, we've got the square root of 32 plus 18, let's get rid of that. So the square root of 32 plus 18 over this thing here. And in the last question, we realised, or we found out that equals 7 times the square root of 2. So that's something that you've got to observe. So usually, or a lot of times, part A links to part B. So in part A, we simplified this to 7 root 2. So we've got to simplify 7 root 2 over 3 plus root 2. Now, if ever we've got a square root on the bottom, it's considered bad form math, so we've got to get rid of anything that's got the square root on the bottom. And the way we do that is we multiply by the conjugate. Now, this was in your class notes. So what we need to do is we need to times top and bottom by 3 minus the square root of 2. So once we've done that, that's our first mark. And so we're going to do this times by this. Now, when we do this, we can just multiply the numbers together. We can do numbers times numbers or square roots times square roots. We can't do numbers times square roots. And what I mean by that is, if we do 7 root 2 times 3, we do the 7 times 3, which is 21 root 2. And then we're going to do 7 root 2 times by the root 2, albeit it's a minus. Now here, we're going to multiply the square roots together. So it's 7 root 4. So notice on the first one, we did the 7 times the 3, so that's 21, and then had that root 2 on. And then when we multiply the same thing, because this 7 root 2 is just one big thing. When we do the root 2 times the root 2, that's going to be root 4. So we've got 21 root 2 minus 7 root 4. And on the bottom, we use the smiley face method. So we do 3 times 3, which is 9. We do root 2 times minus root 2, which is minus root 4. Minus root 4. Let's try that again. We can simplify all this in a second. Then we've got root 2 times 3. Now notice that's the square root times the whole number. So that's just simply 3 root 2. And then we've got to do 3 times root 2, but this time it's minus. So again, it's a number times, so it's a number times by a square root. So that's again 3 root 2. Okay, so now let's try simplifying it. We can't simplify 21 root 2, so that simply stays as 21 root 2. Root 4 here is 2. Square root of 4 is 2. So 7 lots of 2 is going to be 14, so that's going to be minus 14. And then we got 9. In fact, let's deal with this first of all. So we've got plus 3 lots of root 2, take away 3 lots of root 2. And the reason that we do this is that they're going to cancel. So the 3 root 2 and minus 3 root 2 cancel out. And then we've got 9 take away square root of 4. Now the square root of 4 is simply 2. So 9 take away 2 is 7. So we've got 21 root 2 minus 14 all over 7. And then what we do is we can split this into two things. Because we've only got one thing on the bottom, we can split it into 21 root 2 over 7 minus 14 over 7. Now 21 over 7 is 3, so that simplifies down to 3 root 2. And 14 over 7 simplifies down to 2. So it's 3 root 2 minus 2. And if you have a look, it says here it's got to be in the form b root 2 plus c. So here b is 3 and c is minus 2. Okay. Next question. So we've got the first one, which is find the value of 16 to the power of a quarter. Now the power of a quarter means the fourth root of 16. And what that means is that something times by something times by something times by something equals 16. Now remember it's not something times by 4, it's something times by itself 4 times. So that's going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So the fourth root of 16 equals 2. Nice and easy that. Now the next one is quite tricky. So we're going to deal with the brackets and powers first. So if you've got x to the power of 2x to the power of minus a quarter, the way we deal with minus a quarter is we're going to say that's 2 over x to the power of a quarter. The fact that it's the negative power, it just means the x goes underneath. It's not 2 to the power of minus a quarter, it's just the x to the minus a quarter. So the x goes underneath. And that's the power of 4. So the next thing we're going to do is we dealt with the brackets, we're now going to deal with the power, or the indices. So it's going to be 2 to the power of 4 is 16. Then x to the power of a quarter, the power of 4. When we've got brackets like this and we've got powers, we need to multiply them together. So a quarter times by 4 is x to the power of 1, which is just x. We've got x times 16 over x. So that's 16x over x. They'll cancel out, leaving you simply with 16. Again, it's not the most straightforward of questions, but it's something that we're going to need to deal with because they come up all the time. And again, if that was too fast, go back, go through it again. Pause it at each time. So this one, we've got 32 to the power of 3/5. So the first thing I'm going to do is the bottom is the root. So we're going to do the 5th root, and then whatever that is, we're going to raise to the power of 3. Now the 5th root of 32, that means something times something times something times something times something. So something times something times something times something times something equals 32. And that's 2. Because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So that's going to equal 2 cubed, which is 8. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. Okay, now if we have a look at this one, we've got a negative square root. So the first thing we do with a fraction, and it's a negative square root, is we flip it upside down. So that's going to be 4 over 25x to the power of 4, all to the power of a half. Okay, and then we start doing with this. So the bottom is the root, so that's going to be the square root. So we do the square root of 4, which is 2. We do the square root of this. So the square root of 25 is 5. And because we've got x to the power of 4, power of a half, we need to multiply the powers. So 4 lots of a half is 2. That's going to be x to the power of 2. That's it. So step 1, we deal with the negative by flipping it upside down. Step 2, we deal with the root, so it's going to be square root of 4, square root of 25, and then we multiply the powers together, so it's in brackets. Okay, question 4. Now this is a big question, it's worth 7 marks. Now the whole thing with simultaneous equations in C2, so in C1, is that you've got to use the elimination, so you've got to use the substitution method, which either means you've got to have x equals something or y equals something. So if we rearrange this, and we have x, it doesn't matter which one you do, x equals 2 minus y. So we're going to get this so it's just x. We're going to get rid of this plus y by bringing it over to this side. So it's going to be 2 minus y. And then we're going to substitute x into here. So we're going to get 4y squared minus, in brackets, instead of x squared, because x is the same as this, we're going to have 2 minus y squared equals 11. Now, 2 minus y squared is 2 minus y times 2 minus y. So if ever we've got squared brackets, we don't just do 4 and y squared, we have to have this thing here. So 2 times 2 is 4, minus y times minus y is going to be plus y squared, minus 2y minus 2y. So that's 4 plus y squared minus 4y. Now the key thing here, and this I think is tricky, is we've got 4y squared minus, and then we're going to put this all in brackets, because it's going to be minus. So 4 plus y squared minus 4y equals 11. Now the reason that you put it in brackets is because this minus is going to change every sign. So it's going to be 4y squared minus 4 minus y squared, but plus 4y equals 11. Now, if that's gone too fast, go back, check it again. So we've substituted this x into here. Have a look, it's the minus x squared. So we're going to figure out what x squared is. So we're going to figure out what 2 minus y squared is, which we did over here. And it's going to be minus all of that, which means that everything in this bracket here has got to change signs. So, once we've done that, we're going to simplify and move it all onto the left-hand side. So 4y squared minus y squared is going to be 3y squared plus 4y, and then minus 15. Now hopefully this will factorise nicely. So 3y and y equals 0. And I'm going to stick 5 there and 3 there. So 5 lots of y is going to be 5y. 3y times 3 is going to be 9y. And 5y and 9y I can use to make 4y. So we need to have plus 9y. So that's going to be 3y times by 3. And I'm going to have, I need to have minus 5y. So it's going to be minus 5 times y. And then if I do minus 5 times plus 3, I'm going to get minus 15. So I'm confident that I've got that right. Again, we haven't finished yet, just because we factorised it, we've got to solve. It says here, we've got to solve the simultaneous equations. So then, we set this bracket equals 0. So 3y minus 5 equals 0. So 3y equals 5, y equals 5 over 3. This bracket, y plus 3 equals 0, so y equals minus 3. Now once you've got the y values, just like in GCSE, once you've got the y values, you've got to go back and find the x values. And we said here, back at the start, that my x value is 2, take away my y value. So with here, x equals 2, take away minus 3, so x equals 5. Here we've got x equals 2, take away 5 thirds, so x equals 1 third. And that's it, that's that question. Like I say, not easy, but what you need to be doing, like I said in class, we need to be doing over the week at least 10 hours, probably 15 hours work. And if you haven't done 15 hours work, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, I didn't do very well on the test, that's possibly the reason why. You can't underestimate enough how much work, so I can't overstate enough how much work you need to do in order to do the A-level maths. But then again, if you do it, you get an A-level in one of the most prestigious A-levels, so that's why people do it. Okay, next one, factorise completely. Notice it says completely. What this means that you've got to do more than one bit of factorising. So what I see here is I've got x minus 4x cubed. And I see there's an x in both things, so I'm going to take an x outside. So that's going to be 1 minus 4x squared. Now, they're not going to give me 3 marks for that, because at GCSE that would be a 1 mark question. Key Stage 3 that would be a 1 mark question. However, it's A level, so it's going to be a little bit trickier. So what you've got to be able to spot is that this thing here is the difference of 2 squared. So the difference of 2 squares. This is 1 times 1. This is 2x times 2x. So that's going to be 1 minus 2x and 1 plus 2x. Again, whenever we've got a factorised completely and it's got an x cubed, whenever we've got C1 that gives us an x cubed which we've got to factorise, step 1 is this one here. We take an x out. Step 2 will be either a difference of 2 squared or you've got to factorise the remaining quadratic. It comes up a lot, so you need to be really, really aware of that. And finally, it was this question here. So find the value of the constants A, B, and C. So if you have a look here, they've got a quadratic and they've put it into this format here where you've got a x plus b squared. So that, you should recognise, is completing a square. So we've got 4x squared plus 8x plus 3. Notice that it's not solve using completing a square, it's just rearrange it so it's looking like completing a square. So the first thing we do, if we've got a coefficient of x squared, we've got to take that outside. So that's 4 lots of x squared plus 2x. Divide this by 4 and we get 3 over 4. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we do the completing the square the way we normally do with this stuff inside the brackets. So we're going to do x plus, then we halve the x, so that's going to be x plus 1 squared, and we take away this thing squared, so take away 1. And then we're going to add 3 quarters. The next thing we need to do is we need to tidy this thing up. And if it looks a little bit untidy at the moment because we've got a whole number and then we've got a fraction, change that 1 to 4 over 4. We've got minus 4 quarters plus 3 quarters. So that's going to be x plus 1 squared minus 1 quarter. And then the final step is that we've got to multiply out the brackets. So we do 4 lots of this and then 4 lots of this. It's going to be 4 lots of x plus 1 squared. 4 lots of a quarter is 1. It's going to be 4 lots of x plus 1 squared minus 1. It's not the longest video in the world. It's only 18 minutes. So you've got no excuse for not watching it 2, 3, 4 times. This will make the difference if you watch it and if you go through each bit and try and understand. If anything you don't understand, come in and ask me questions in class. This will be the difference of whether or not you pass the initial exam. So good luck, boys and girls, and I'm looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible with questions.